titling this episode Voices in the Dark, from where we explore the forces shaping our world from the shadows. To this end, we're delving into a progressively worsening situation that should terrify every one of us who values freedom, democracy, and basic human dignity. Just imagine waking up tomorrow morning, reaching for your phone, only to discover that half the conversations you had yesterday have simply vanished. Not deleted by you, not lost to a technical glitch, but deliberately erased because someone somewhere decided your words were inconvenient. Your thoughts, your questions, your very ability to seek truth, all subject to the whims of unseen gatekeepers. This isn't science fiction because it's happening right now all around us, and it's accelerating at a pace that should make every freedom-loving person's blood run cold. We're living through what can be called the Great Silencing, an unprecedented escalation of censorship that's unlike anything we've seen in the modern era. But here's what makes it so insidious. It's not just coming from one source. It's a hydra-headed monster with tentacles reaching into every corner of our information ecosystem. When was the last time you felt completely free to express a controversial opinion? When did you last see a truly diverse range of perspectives in mainstream media? If you're like most people, you've probably noticed that the range of acceptable discourse is steadily shrinking, like a noose strangling the last gasp of public debate. This isn't your grandfather's censorship, the heavy-handed, obvious kind where secret police knock down doors in the middle of the night. No. This is far more sophisticated and arguably more dangerous. We're dealing with what scholars call soft censorship, a web of social pressure, economic coercion, and technological manipulation that achieves the same result as traditional state repression, but with a smile and a terms of service agreement. So let's examine how this works in practice. You've got traditional state censorship, sure. Globalist-controlled governments around the world are still perfectly happy to throw journalists in prison or shut down newspapers. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Below the surface, you've got a deadly censorship ecosystem. There's self-censorship, people biting their tongues because they've learned that certain opinions can cost them their jobs, their friendships, their social standing. There's media manipulation, news organisations so aligned with political or corporate interests that they're reduced to propaganda outlets. And then there's the big one, the tech giants, Facebook, Twitter, Google, YouTube. These aren't just companies anymore. They're the world's digital town squares where billions of people gather to share ideas, debate issues, and form opinions. When these platforms decide what you can and can't say, they're not just moderating content, they're shaping reality itself. Here's what's truly chilling. These companies often don't even need government pressure to censor. They've internalized the role of information gatekeepers so completely that they proactively suppress ideas they deem harmful or misleading. They've appointed themselves the arbiters of truth in a world where truth has never been more contested or more important. Political scientists have a term for the range of ideas considered acceptable in public discourse, the Overton window. Imagine it as a window through which society looks at the world of possible policies and ideas. What's inside the window is considered mainstream, reasonable, worthy of debate. What's outside is fringe, extreme, unthinkable. Here's the terrifying reality. That window is shrinking at an alarming rate. Ideas that were perfectly mainstream just a decade ago are now considered beyond the pale. Questions that any reasonable person might ask are now treated as dangerous conspiracy theories. Debates that once raged openly in universities, newspapers, and coffee shops are now conducted in whispers, if at all. This isn't just about politics, though politics is certainly part of it. This is about our collective ability to think, to question, to challenge assumptions, to seek truth. When the range of acceptable discourse narrows, so does our capacity for understanding the world around us. And here's the kicker. The people doing the narrowing always believe they're doing it for our own good. They're protecting us from misinformation, from hate speech, from ideas that might harm vulnerable communities. The road to tyranny, as they say, is paved with good intentions. Let's revisit 1859, when a British philosopher named John Stuart Mill wrote something that should be tattooed on the forehead of every person in power today. In his essay on liberty, Mill argued that even incorrect opinions serve a crucial purpose in society. They force us to defend our true beliefs, to understand them more deeply, to refine and strengthen them through debate. He wrote, "The peculiar evil of silencing the expression of an opinion is that it is robbing the human race, those who dissent from the opinion, still more than those who hold it. If the opinion is right, they are deprived of the opportunity of exchanging error for truth. If wrong, they lose what is almost as great a benefit, the clearer perception and livelier impression of truth produced by its collision with error." Consider that for a moment. Mill is saying that when we silence even wrong opinions, we're not just hurting the people who hold those opinions, we're hurting everyone. We're depriving society of the opportunity to test its beliefs, to strengthen its understanding, to grow wiser through debate and discussion. This is why censorship is so dangerous, even when it's well-intentioned. When we decide that certain ideas are too dangerous to be heard, we're not protecting society, we're weakening it. We're creating a brittle orthodoxy that can't withstand challenge because it's never been properly tested. History is littered with the corpses of societies that forgot this lesson. Let's look at one of the most chilling examples, Stalin's Soviet Union. In Stalin's Russia, censorship wasn't just about controlling what people could say, it was about controlling reality itself. The state didn't just suppress dissenting opinions, it literally rewrote history. Photographs were altered to remove people who had fallen out of favour. Books were rewritten to conform to the party line. Even personal memories became suspect as people learned to doubt their own experiences if they contradicted official truth. This wasn't just authoritarian control, this was the systematic destruction of the human capacity for independent thought. And the results were catastrophic. Millions dead from forced famines, purges, and political repression. An entire society living in fear, unable to trust their neighbours, their leaders, or even themselves. But here's what's truly terrifying. It didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process, a slow erosion of freedom that began with seemingly reasonable restrictions on dangerous speech. Each step seemed justified in isolation. Each new limitation was presented as necessary for the greater good. Sound familiar? Now look at the present day, to a country that's perfected the art of modern censorship, China. The Chinese Communist Party has built what might be the most sophisticated censorship apparatus in human history. The Great Firewall doesn't just block websites, it shapes thoughts. It doesn't just suppress information, it creates alternative realities. Ask a young person in Beijing about the Tiananmen Square protests of 1989, and you'll likely get a blank stare. Not because they're being defiant, but because they literally don't know what you're talking about. That event has been so thoroughly scrubbed from Chinese internet and media that it might as well have never happened. But here's what the Chinese government has learned that Stalin never did. You don't need to terrorize people into submission if you can simply make them forget what they're supposed to be angry about. You don't need secret police if you can convince people that there's nothing worth protesting. This is censorship as social engineering, and it's terrifyingly effective. The Chinese people aren't living in obvious oppression. Many of them are prosperous, educated, connected to the global economy. But they're living in a carefully constructed bubble of information that makes meaningful political change nearly impossible. But here's the thing about censorship. It never works the way its practitioners think it will. There's a phenomenon psychologists call the backfire effect, when attempts to suppress information actually make people more interested in it, more likely to believe it, more committed to spreading it. Think about it from a human psychology perspective. When someone tells you that you can't know something, what's your natural reaction? You want to know it even more. When someone tells you that an idea is too dangerous for you to hear, you start wondering what makes it so powerful. This is why authoritarian regimes are inherently unstable. They create the very conditions that lead to their own downfall. By suppressing dissent, they drive it underground where it becomes more radical, more desperate, more willing to use extreme measures. We're seeing this dynamic play out right now in democratic societies around the world. As mainstream institutions become more aggressive about policing speech, people are fleeing to alternative platforms, alternative media sources, alternative communities where they can speak freely. And some of these alternatives are genuinely dangerous. Extremist ideologies calling for violence or climate change, fanatics aggressively disrupting society. The tragic irony is that by trying to protect society from dangerous ideas, censorship often drives people toward them. It's like trying to put out a fire by pouring gasoline on it. Here's what every would-be censor needs to understand. Regimes built on lies are inherently fragile. They require constant maintenance, constant vigilance, constant escalation of control, because lies, unlike truth, don't have the strength to stand on their own. When you build a society on censorship and propaganda, you're building it on quicksand. Every suppressed truth becomes a potential earthquake. Every silenced voice becomes a potential rallying cry. Every act of censorship becomes evidence of the system's weakness, not its strength. This is why tyrannical regimes always end the same way, in collapse, chaos, and often violence. The Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, Mao's China, Pol Pot's Cambodia, they all followed the same trajectory. Initial success through fear and control, followed by increasing brittleness, followed by sudden catastrophic failure. And when these systems collapse, they don't just take their leaders down with them. They take entire societies, entire generations, entire ways of life. The human cost is always enormous, always tragic, always avoidable if people had just been allowed to speak freely in the first place. So where does this leave us? How do we navigate a world where censorship is becoming more sophisticated, more pervasive, more accepted by people who should know better? First, we need to recognise what's happening. We need to call censorship what it is, regardless of who's doing it or what noble goals they claim to be pursuing. Whether it's a government banning books, a tech company deplatforming users, or a university disinviting speakers, the effect is the same. The narrowing of discourse and the weakening of our collective capacity for truth-seeking. Second, we need to defend the principle of free speech, even when, especially when, it protects speech we find offensive, wrong, or dangerous. Because the moment we start making exceptions, we've already lost. The moment we say free speech, but not for them, we've handed the censors the tools they need to silence us all. Third, we need to build and support alternative institutions, media outlets, social platforms, educational institutions that are committed to open discourse rather than ideological conformity. We need to vote with our wallets, our attention, and our participation for organisations that value truth over comfort, debate over consensus. But most importantly, we need to remember that this fight isn't just about politics or policy. It's about the kind of society we want to live in, the kind of world we want to leave for our children? Do we want a world where truth is determined by whoever has the most power, where questions are forbidden and dissent is dangerous, where the range of acceptable thought grows narrower with each passing year? Or do we want a world where ideas compete in the marketplace of discourse, where truth emerges through debate rather than decree, where the human capacity for reason, curiosity, and moral growth is allowed to flourish? The choice is ours, but we need to make it soon. Because once the machinery of censorship is fully in place, once the habit of silence becomes ingrained, once the fear of speaking out becomes stronger than the love of truth, it becomes exponentially harder to turn back. History shows us that societies can lose their freedom gradually, almost imperceptibly, through 1,000 small compromises and accommodations. But it also shows us that people who are committed to truth, who are willing to speak out despite the costs, who refuse to be silenced by fear or intimidation, refuse toxic vaccines, and refused stupid face masks, can change the world. The question is, which side of history will you be on? Will you be among those who stayed silent while freedom died? Or will you be among those who spoke up, who fought back, who refused to let the light of human discourse be extinguished? The choice is yours. But choose quickly, because the window for choosing is closing faster than you think.